You are now listening to the Cut and Caliber Podcast.
Hey!
Episode 1.
Yeah, we made it. We made it.
100,342.
Man, you are really shooting for the sky here.
And
I like it.
that's month 1. So get ready.
Oh, I like it. Oh, man. Well, welcome to the first podcast, official podcast of Cut and Caliber. Thank you for joining us. And we thought the best thing for this first episode would be to get to know us a little bit better, to get to know who the real Kyle and Stephen are.
Yeah. Some questions that, I actually don't even know about you, and I'm sure vice versa. So
Probably.
it's kind of everybody else gets to learn, but we get to learn too.
And so here's the thing. We came up with a couple questions that we're going to ask each other and kind of discuss as we go along. And now let's be completely honest, because Kyle, the people want honesty. I mean, they want complete transparency. Complete transparency. So later today, we're going to talk about our bank accounts, our tax returns. We're going to be completely transparent, or not. But we're also going to have a mystery question at the end. Now, Kyle doesn't know the one that I picked, and I don't know the one that Kyle picks. So we do know what we're going to talk about, but we don't know the mystery question. So that's going to be at the end. So stay tuned for that. But let's get into it. What are the questions?
The first one is one most people are pretty familiar with. It's a desert island. So the premise for desert island is you're obviously trapped on a desert island, and you only have these things for the rest of your life, or at least until you're rescued. And so I thought the first one would be, what's a movie that you would be stuck with on desert island that you would have to watch forever and ever?
Okay. All right. The movie that I think would be my go-to, and it's like literally one that I could watch 100 times, is Hook.
Hook?
I love Hook, man.
Well, you're going to watch it more than 100 times on desert island.
It's like The Good Place, where the lady just keeps watching that movie over and over and over again.
It would be ironic to get like Groundhog's Day.
That
To watch Groundhog's Day every day.
But see you know what? I do like Bill Murray, but I don't think I can watch it every day.
I thought about this actually for a while, because I was like, okay, I'm stuck there. I'm probably depressed, so I need something funny.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
Well, I was thinking one of my favorite movies is No Country for Old Men. Because it's so good.
No, it's so good. I love it.
Right.
But I don't think I could watch it.
Exactly. That's not something Antonio Bardem, I don't want to.
Yeah.
He would haunt my dreams.
It's an intense movie.
So I actually went with one because it would remind me of good times as well. And it's a stupid movie, but it's MacGruber. And exactly. And it's terrible. It's
throat rip.
Exactly. I could watch that, and that would cheer me up. And I would think about all the times that I've watched it. Oh, man.
You actually had a reasoning.
I had a reason.
Yeah, I was just like, what's my favorite movie? Hook.
I'll watch that. But then you got to realize once you're rescued, that's not going to be your favorite movie anymore.
No.
You're going to never watch it
That's
again.
the same thing for you listen to an album over and over and over again, and you love it, and then there's one day where you wake up, you don't love it anymore.
That's how I listen to music, though.
Yeah, me too.
I burn it out.
Yeah.
I get it out of my system.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to our next desert island thing.
What album?
Exactly.
I thought about this a little bit because
I haven't. Actually, I have not thought about this yet.
So, me being a metalhead,
I
figured I'd have to go somewhere around that route. And I actually thought of one of Under Oath's album.
Dude, that's why
Define the Great Line was the one I was kind of leaning towards, just because I felt like that was such a good album.
Yeah.
And it's not... the lawnmower. What's so funny is me and my buddy always called that the lawnmower song, because it starts off with and then when you watch the music video, you find out it's a film.
Yeah, it's a projector.
Right. And so we're like, oh, the lawnmower song. And then we watch the music video. We're like, yep, we're idiots.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I would say. Is
that's
Define
what
the Great Line. Yep.
I think mine, because I can go back to this album and still enjoy it, and it's like my guilty pleasure, right?
Oh no.
Spice Girls. No. I'm kind of going off of what you said for your movie. Like you can have a good time. So it's like nostalgia, Panic at the Disco, Fever You Can't Sweat Out. I really loved that album when it came out because it was different.
It was in that pop punk emo era. Yeah. And then it came out and everyone's like, ooh, this is different.
No, like they never made anything like that again. The second album was good, but the first album, like I listened to that a lot and I can still listen to it to this day.
And that's, I chimed in with
every
Haven't You
song.
People Ever Heard?
Yeah. Haven't you people ever heard of?
Well,
yeah, so
it was close.
It's I'm pretty good. I feel like that was pretty spot on. But that, I think that might be it. Another one that came to my mind, maybe this is the runner-up, is Death Cab Transatlanticism, because that one was a huge nostalgia.
Yeah, I think I'd have to throw out one away from metal. Would definitely be From Under the Cork Tree by Fall Out Boy.
Oh yeah,
because that was like the same era as Panic, and then that one I listened to that album 100 million times.
Well, that one was another one where you could listen to that. Honestly, any of those like early Fueled by Ramen artists, like I'm a sucker for. Yeah, Pete. What was it? Actually, I went to the museum recently, and they had a kind of a big room with Panic at the Disco, My Chemical Romance, and Fall Out Boy, and it's all about like the fandom. But they picked those three bands because Pete Wentz had something to do with all three of them.
He did. He signed
Panic.
Yeah, Yuri. What was that?
The lead Brandon
singer? That's
Urie.
the only one that's left, I believe.
Yeah. He's the only one that really, like, if he left, it wouldn't be Panic because that's his voice.
That's
what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though the main guy who wrote the songs left.
Sure.
That's just nerd stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so
but that's fun. I remember that stuff. That was good.
Right?
That.
I feel like I could go back, I could listen to all those tracks, have a good feeling about each of them, but also be nostalgic about other times. So I would need take you out of your element.
Yeah, I would need a mixtape for the Desert Island.
That would be
before I go on any trips where I could get stranded on a desert island. I'm gonna make a mixtape and bring it with me.
Yeah, that's good.
Cover my bases.
Yeah, that's not bad. But then there's always the time where you're listening to a mixtape and you hear that one song, you're like, man, I just want to finish this album.
Well, and then
you're like, I will never be able to.
Well, and then my Walkman that I have this mixtape on will run out of batteries, and I'll listen to it one time. So
you're like, dang it, I should have charged it.
There's a hole in that whole premise. So
yeah, I mean, same with the movie. Are you gonna have a TV just readily available?
Possibly. I don't know.
It's like Lost, and then you find this hatch, and then you're like, oh man, I got a TV. I just happen to have a VHS of Hook,
I'm not going to count it out because anything's possible.
Anything is possible. Yeah.
So that brings us to another popular desert island one is a book.
Yes.
You and I are both pretty avid readers. I wouldn't say we're bookworms, but
yeah, I'm not
we read enough to
I'm not
to know how.
Yeah, that's good. I'm not like, I don't do it every day like I should, but yeah, I read from time to time.
I bet you'd be surprised with how much you actually do read during a day if you combine articles.
Oh,
I mean everything,
advertisements,
everything. I was thinking about that. I was like, I probably read 20 to 40 pages. I mean, if between combining all the articles, books,
should write a Medium article about that. How I read 20 to 40 pages a day.
I just read articles.
I look at advertisements. I read calendars.
Facebook's like 30 pages.
Yeah, that is true. You do read a lot on Facebook. But what would be your book?
It would be one that's pretty popular, and I think a lot of people. It would be Outliers with Malcolm Gladwell, just because I remember reading that a couple times, and it blew my mind when I first read it. And I know a lot of the stuff may or may not be applicable in a lot of ways, but it was an interesting book. And then there's another book that's probably the book that I've read the most amount of times, and it's a golf book, and it's called Putting Out of Your Mind. And it's like a sports psychology book about thinking about golf differently and like getting out of your head and just doing the natural function of swinging a club.
So
but
you would be practicing golf while you're on
I don't
the
know
desert
that
island?
book.
You'd fasten yourself some putters.
Yeah,
and
I would
drivers
just get a bamboo stick but it would be because when I come back from the desert island, if I made it, I would be the best golfer in the world.
That's so true. It's
really good. Kind of like preemptive planning.
Yeah.
You know, what about you?
Now there's one book, and when I was a young lad, I read this one book, and it was maybe one of the first ones that I actually finished, and it's huge. It's a very thick book, but I could not put it down. I remember like devouring this book, and I still have never found that feeling about another book.
And if you say Dr. Seuss or something when you were a kid.
No, Shel Silverstein. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's actually, and no one's really ever heard of it, but it won like the Pulitzer Prize or something like that. It won a prize. And The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon. Rough summary: it's about two guys who are in New York City, and they start like a comic book, like basically like Marvel, right? So, but they start like their own superheroes. They have a radio show based off of that superhero. They have movies based off of that superhero, and it just kind of gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And at the end, one of them goes to war, and it kind of, you know, it has everything in it. It had like adventure. It had kind of like entrepreneurship, honestly, to a point.
Mm-hmm.
It also had art, which I'm a sucker for. And
was this like in the 30s?
Yeah. It was like before Marvel and DC. Well, it's probably around that same time, actually. I think that's where he got his inspiration.
Well, then the guy went off and became Captain America.
Yeah,
so,
it's crazy.
That makes sense.
And then it's just kind of like a prequel into the movies. But no, it's just a really good book, and it's long too, so it'll take a long time to read, and it also has a lot of stuff in it. So
you're right. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, not many people have, you know, and that's probably, I think I've read it 1.5 times. So, but I've gone back. So that tells you that I was like, I
had intentions.
I don't read much, but I went back and started it again.
Well, so why don't you take the next question?
Okay. No. So the next question is, you know, who are some of your heroes? Now, I have there's so many people that I look up to and aspire to be, and whatever they put out, I consume as far as articles or videos. But there's one guy, and I think this kind of goes maybe like something that not many people really know about me, but I am a huge fan of Walt Disney.
The positive parts.
Yes, the positive parts. I look up to him because, you know, he made something out of nothing. You know, he was bankrupt. He was shut down 300 plus times to get bankrolled for Walt Disney World and Walt Disneyland, but he still made it happen, and now it's one of the biggest amusement parks, but also one of the biggest entertainment conglomerates in the world. And so I think, and he has a legacy, and I'm a big fan of, like, you know, what's going to leave a legacy, and so trying to, you know, live my life like that. So, but he was just also a very, very creative person and always pushing his team around him, sometimes in a not so great way, but, you know, sometimes in a good way, that really brought their creative side out. And a lot of people who worked with him stayed with him forever. Some people are still working there that worked with him, and they're, you know, in 80s, they're 90s almost, and they're still like consulting for Walt Disney.
Yeah.
So he's probably my top one, I would say, you know, like childhood hero to even now I look up to him.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think we both can agree. The kind of cliche answer for here is we both have good dads. So those are pretty, I didn't want to go cliche, but I think both of our dads are up there on our list of inspiration.
Big time. And my mom too.
Well, yes. And that, you know, that is my bad for assuming a hero has to be male, because that's, And I said,
it's 2018, Kyle.
I know.
Get with it.
You can make heroes whoever you want.
Yeah.
But in my head, when I hear hero, a lot of boys think of their dads as kind of a natural first selection.
Yeah. I think that's also, you know, the media being sure. Look up to your dad.
But I would say this, like you said, you kind of touched on something that a lot of people don't know about you. And a lot of my heroes, and I use that loosely, are a lot of detectives that I read about in true crime. And I'm going to touch on this later in one of our following questions.
Yeah.
But like these guys that kind of dedicate, when you think about hearing a case that lasted for 25 years, like they've worked on that entire case for a good half of their life,
and
get zero credit. at the end. They help solve the crime.
You know the serial killer.
You know, and you
know
may
him.
even know their name, but they sacrifice almost some of their whole lives to track one guy down, and then they kind of get lost in the names, the history as like, oh, John Smith helped capture this guy, and that guy spent more hours than you could ever fathom working on one thing. And I think
why do you look up to those guys? Just because
that they are driven by helping somebody
doing
solve
something for nothing, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of people that you want if something ever terrible happened to you to work on your case, is these diehard people that just want to see crimes get solved and obsess about it. Like you don't want the guy that's kind of casual about it. You want the obsessive workaholic. So anyways, let's move on to the next one.
Yeah.
This is one I thought of. And what's the first thing you would do after winning a lottery? And let's say it's life-changing money, $100 million.
What is go to Vegas, Alex?
Go to Vegas.
No, I'm just kidding. That would not be my first thing. My first thing would be pay off debt if I had any at that time.
So you're going rational.
Oh, yeah.
Let's
very
say,
rational.
Let's just say you got a call that said, Steven, you won $100 million. As soon as you hang up, what's the first thing you do?
Buy my parents a house.
So you're like, hey, guys, let's go look at houses right now?
Bingo. Yeah. I'm be like, if I'm working
they can't wait a day?
Well, I mean, yeah. But I mean, like, honestly, that's like whenever someone's like, what's the first thing you do? With,
yes.
If money was no object, I'd be like, I would buy my
Take
parents'
care
house.
of your family.
Right, because I'm always a big advocate for family first, and I think, I owe my parents too much money to even comprehend. So I think the first thing I would do would be buy them a house. But first thing for me, I would probably go travel. I think would be like my first reaction. I'd buy a ton of cool vlogging gear, and I would just go travel.
Yeah.
So
it would be like a really tough thing, because once the world is your oyster, like, what do you narrow it down to first?
Yeah.
Because you're like, I could go buy anything I want.
Yeah.
What should I actually buy?
I mean, and then like, a couple months down the road, I'd be like, okay, now I should start investing this money. So, I mean, very rational stuff, but of course you want to be like, yo, let's party. Guys, I'm going to rent a private jet. We're going to Vegas for the weekend. That's it. Just for the weekend.
And I'll cover everything.
Yeah.
But then think about it. Then gambling, like going to Vegas, would you gamble?
I probably would, but I think
it's like,
see, here's the scary part for me. It's like, when would I know how to stop? Last time we were in Vegas, I was broke. I knew when to stop because I had no money.
Right, but I mean, winning $100 in Vegas when you just won $100 million, like, it's like, is it worth it?
Yeah, but it's like, I mean, I guess you just give that to your friend, like, hey,
it would be a weird,
buy yourself something nice.
It'd be a weird problem to have.
Yeah.
I think that
would be a weird. I never really kind of thought about that. That would be a super weird problem to have,
because like you wouldn't gambling would kind of, because the whole point of gambling is to increase the money that you have to get to kind of risk reward. Well, the reward will never be remotely close to what you had just attained. So it's like, would you want to anymore?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I think that's a weird thing. Like $500 is still like a big deal,
right? Like
to anybody.
If you
but
want
like $500 to a person who just got
who's a
$100 million
billionaire or something, it's like
whatever, dude. Like,
you got to love the game to like.
I just wiped a $100 bill with my shoes. It's like, you don't really, $500 doesn't really make that or break something. But then again, it could.
Who knows?
So what would you do?
Besides the standard things, like get your parents a house, like take the family on vacation.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to do this move where you get one of the suites in Vegas, like the top.
So you're going Vegas?
Well, I just because it's on my bucket list.
I was just kidding.
It's on my bucket list as to be able to get to a point where you could rent out a whole suite, hangover style, like that suite, not the events that happened.
We'll take the hangover suite. We'll take the hangover suite.
The one Caesar stayed in.
Yeah.
And then, close buddies, turn it golf trip, whatever, a few people just to say like, hey, I did this. This was a fun weekend. And then, take care of the responsibilities that would come with making that much money. But
Yeah.
You know, I don't think I would get too crazy because you don't want people knowing that you won that much.
Right. I know. Then you have people come out of the woodwork.
Whew.
Yeah. I think, but I mean, we got pretty good ones. I think that's not too bad. Well, now let's get to the part that everybody wants to know, the mystery questions.
Okay.
Do you have one?
I do. I actually have two. I was going to ask you, this is one that kind of is torn between a lot of people.
Okay.
And it's, do you believe in ghosts? And do you have any evidence that they do or do not exist?
Do I believe in ghosts? I'm not sure.
Have you had any situations where you truly kind of questioned whether they exist?
Yeah, of course. Like after like watching a scary movie and then like I hear a bang in the kitchen, I'm like immediately like, ghost. Guys, this place is haunted.
There's a ghost.
I've read articles. I've, looked up paranormal stuff, that really interests me for a while. I mean, it still does to this day. I still watch scary movies.
Oh yeah.
But I have never had an experience that I could be like, okay, that was another
truly
realm or
sure
dimension or whatever you want to call it. Now, I do believe there's a spiritual force at work somewhere, but is that what we call ghosts? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Is it like so you're saying ghosts as a definition of like
the stereotypical you see,
like your grandma's coming back,
yeah,
stuff like that.
The standard ghost stories where you're in an old building and you see an outline of a figurine walking around.
I don't know. I mean, okay, let me tell a ghost story really quick, and we're gonna make this quick. But there was one time I was working at the Eagle River Ale House, and I was managing, and I went upstairs, and we had security cameras in the office, right? And the office was right next to the upstairs seating area. And I looked at the security cameras, and I saw a shape of a figure. Now, it was definitely a human shape. And I was like, dude, that is weird, right? And so... And it's like me and one other person in the entire restaurant downstairs, and we're about to close.
It's always restaurants.
Dude, it's weird. And this is an older building, too.
Sure.
And so
after you peed yourself.
Well, I mean, I saw this figure, and I still, to this day, I don't know what it was. I turned the lights on, and nothing was there, right? But then as me and, or might have been a couple other people, but we were all downstairs. Nobody was upstairs. We heard footsteps upstairs. Now... is that my mind playing tricks on me? Probably. Was I, just seeing things? Possibly. Could that have been the floor creaking? It's an older building, so maybe.
That's the problem. There's a million things. That
right. That's what I'm saying. Like, as far as like ghosts, like, I don't know. I'm 50-50 on it. What about you?
I mean, I'm a firm no.
You're firm no.
There is no ghosts.
Okay.
And
as we know it, as in like...
Sure. I'm in the stereotypical ghost stories. I saw a ghost or whatever. I will always say nay.
Nay.
and only because I truly believe that, and I don't know why, this article came out a few years ago that really like made sense to me, and this is probably where it all came from. It was a cracked article.
I love cracked articles.
Yeah, they're hit or miss sometimes, but this one was referring to different levels of tones that we hear. And yep. And so certain tones can cause us to basically hallucinate. And so if it's a low, like buzzing sound that's common in a lot of places, it can cause you to see things out of the corner of your eyes, like shadow people. It's a very common thing that somebody saw something dart on the side of their eyes.
Yeah. I could
and so
relate. This
is very common when this tone is going on. And so a lot of places around the world have this, and I don't even know if
natural?
Yes, a natural frequency. This frequency that is hit causes us in our ear causes our eyes to see things that aren't there.
Interesting.
And so I was like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense because I've experienced that myself where out of the corner of my eye, I'll feel like I've seen something moving or dashing across or something like that. And I'm like, so these shadow people, that's what they call them.
Yeah.
Are just always in the corner of my eye, and they're always moving around, and like you never see it straight on.
Okay, what if we did this?
Did an experiment.
Yeah. What if we went ghost hunting and we did a podcast as we were ghost
in the
hunting?
haunted place?
Actually, going even farther back, and this podcast is getting a little longer than we were wanting, but going farther back, Kyle and I wanted to start a ghost hunting TV show. What was it called? Do you remember?
Well,
it was like I can't remember. We'll have
it was like Ghost Puncher or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Because you were always saying like, "Oh man, I'm just gonna go into a haunted house and I'm just gonna start punching, like yelling and screaming."
Because if they try to touch me,
they're getting it straight in the teeth, man.
Yeah.
But I think that would be kind of fun. Is like find or maybe the Anchorage Hotel. Technically, that's supposedly haunted. We do a podcast.
I went in there and asked them about that on New Year's.
Same with I did that to the Seward Hotel, the Van Gilder Hotel. They supposedly have one room that's haunted. That would be fun to do.
Yeah.
So we just
do a podcast in there, and
right? But we stay the night.
Sure.
And then if
we just podcast all night.
Exactly. Well, I'm thinking like, what if we like just like woke up and we're like, I heard something, and then we start recording. That might be an interesting thing to do. I don't know. We'll have to see.
I like it. I'll do it.
Yeah. So, but as far as my mystery question to you, I was just going to ask, and to go into further detail about serial killers. What is it that fascinates you about serial killers?
That's a tough one because it's such a dark topic that people get.
Now, I mean, just for the people listening that don't know, Kyle listens to a lot of true crime podcasts.
Yeah.
And so you'd say you're pretty an avid.
And I read about it.
Right.
Everything.
Yeah. No, I mean, you have a lot of information downloaded into your brain about true crime, serial killers, detectives, all that stuff. What is it really that you really enjoy?
I think it came from, so I was raised as a youngster in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And right when we moved up to Alaska, they captured Jeffrey Dahmer right there. Where I lived, and I'd been into his
at your house.
Yeah, I went into his chocolate. He worked at a chocolate factory at night, and I had been. My mom took me in there before.
Oh,
and so I had this.
I
like,
didn't know that.
Yeah, I had this like connection with like that in the sense that I was very intrigued by that story because it was so close to me at one time. I could have seen him. I could have interacted with him and not know it.
Yeah,
and so I think when I was younger, that kind of like was like, wow. I mean, obviously, he's a terrible human being, but I'm intrigued about the story. And so then I started kind of looking into different true crime things, started reading, listening, etc., and just learning about these terrible people and the good people that capture them and the unfortunate amount of victims they had. But all in all, it's like, why do people read about World War II where millions and millions of people died?
Yeah.
And it's because there's something about not a good story, but history that people want to know more about. And so I think I was drawn to that, and it kind of fits in the history as well. And it's not much more than I can say that it just is an intriguing topic to me.
I mean, I learned something. I didn't know you were that close to Jeffrey Dahmer. So
sure. And I mean, like I said, it's all, I don't know how much is true regardless. Then I've been in the same place he's been, and it started something when I was younger too that interests me. So
cool. All right. Well, hopefully this podcast kind of lets you into a little bit more of who Kyle is and who I am.
Hopefully you learned something, and hopefully we spark some nostalgia in you to go listen to some old Fall Out Boy.
Oh man, or Panic at the Disco. You know what? I might do that on the way home. Just listen.
I'm doing it.
Just slam some Panic, dude. But guys, we love that you guys took your time out of your day to listen to this podcast. Now we are on iTunes now, so you can subscribe to our podcast. We'd love to hear what you think. So comment, review, let us know. Hit us up on Instagram at Stephen Cornfield and
at Kyle Redding,
even at Cut & Caliber.
Sure.
And so thank you guys for listening to this podcast, and we will see you next Monday.
See ya.